Have you ever looked at your life and thought, why is this happening to me?
Hmm.
What if I told you it's not a punishment, but a personal invitation from the universe to finally discover your purpose? Every setback, every delay, every heartbreak wasn't random. It was precision engineered to place you right here, right now. In this episode, we dive into Marc Reklau's Why Me? Why Here? Why Now? A book that turns your pain into power and confusion into clarity. So before you blame life again, ask yourself, ow, what if the answer you've been searching for has been waiting inside you all along?
Hello, everyone. Hi, all.
And welcome to BookPodCastZone. It really is a genuine pleasure to be digging into this particular book today. I'm the host speaker, Emma.
And I'm John, the expert speaker. It's excellent to be here. This material, well, it really hits home for a lot of people right now, doesn't it? That feeling of being a bit adrift.
It absolutely does. And our mission today is really tailored for you, the listener, especially if you appreciate structure, clarity, actionable insights. We're looking at Marc Reklau's Why Me? Why Here?
Yeah.
Why Now? Not just as a summary, but really as an 8-step guide, a kind of personal quest, moving from that state of confusion to hopefully real clarity.
Yeah, moving beyond just the noise, right? The endless scroll, the burnout we're all feeling, especially now in 2025.
Exactly.
And that structure, that roadmap, that's the real value here, I think. We're trying to synthesize this to help you understand why you might feel that way. That aimlessness, even if on paper everything looks fine.
Right. Successful career, maybe, but still, something's off.
Precisely. And more importantly, we want to pull out the toolkit. What specific actionable things can you take from this book to actually gain some momentum?
So we'll be dissecting it all, the emotional side, the highs, the lows.
Yeah.
Those moments where you have to confront things.
And those light bulb moments, too.
Yeah.
We're going chapter by chapter, really treating it like a practical psychological toolkit.
Okay, let's dive in then. Chapter 1, The Call to Adventure, Waking Up to the Void. Reklau starts right there, doesn't he? With that stark realization.
He calls it the gut punch of midlife drift. And it's so relatable.
It really is. That feeling. Maybe staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering if the daily grind, the meetings, the constant pressure, is that it? Is this all there is?
And importantly, he points out, it's not just about finances or status, right? It can hit high achievers just as hard, maybe harder sometimes. It's a crisis of meaning.
Totally separate from the bank account.
And this crisis, it feels particularly sharp right now. The book touches on this, and it's so relevant for 2025. Think about AI, large language models. How quickly they're reshaping jobs.
Especially specialized roles. People are scrambling to upskill, but it's happening so fast.
Exactly. And that feeling of displacement, it's acute. We saw it here in the U.S., didn't we? The big tech layoffs. Silicon Valley, Seattle, places where your job wasn't just a job, it was your identity.
High earners, people whose entire sense of self-worth, maybe even their community status, was tied to that specific high-level role.
And then, boom, the external structure collapses. It's not just losing income, which is huge, obviously. It's a devastating identity void. Who am I now?
That's the catalyst moment Reklau talks about. He uses his own experience, right? A rock-bottom job loss.
His pivot point.
Yeah.
And it often is something major like that, isn't it? A job loss, a big move, maybe a health scare, something that just slams the brakes on life.
Forces you to stop and actually look inward, maybe for the first time in years.
And that's where the book positions itself as a kind of lifeline. It reframes that setback. It's not just, oh, I failed.
Yeah.
It's maybe that external thing had to collapse because it was actually blocking you from building something internal, something more authentic.
It's a powerful reframe, moving beyond just the disappointment or the practical difficulties.
Yeah, digging into the psychological impact. When your whole identity is tied up in an expertise that suddenly feels, well, maybe not obsolete, but less central because of technology, that's a tough pill to swallow.
So Reklau says, okay, this forces you inward. And the key idea he introduces here is the inner voice.
Right. But crucially, not as some, booming revelation from the heavens.
No lightning bolt moment.
No. He calls it a breadcrumb trail, which I love. We expect purpose to hit us like this huge, life-altering billboard sign.
Like, here is your grand purpose, flashing in neon.
Exactly. But Reklau suggests it's much quieter. It's subtle. It's that tiny flicker of curiosity that starts to replace the raw ache of feeling lost.
Okay, but here's a practical question, especially for our learner audience who likes clarity. How do you actually hear that whisper amidst all the noise? How do you tell the difference between, say, generalized anxiety screaming at you and that quiet inner voice pointing the way?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The book suggests looking at the energy and the action it prompts. Anxiety, it comes from that fight or flight place. It demands speed or avoidance.
Panic mode, quick decisions, or just shutting down completely.
Right. Cortisol flooding the system. But the inner voice, Reklau suggests it provides direction. It's rooted in genuine curiosity, not fear. It nudges you gently towards something, a book, a conversation, maybe trying out an old hobby again.
So it doesn't scream, fix this and ab you.
No. It whispers, maybe explore this a little. One feels like pressure, urgency, fear. The other feels like possibility, a gentle pull.
So if I'm endlessly scrolling news feeds trying to find some magic answer right now, that's probably anxiety driving the bus.
Likely. But if you feel this calm, quiet impulse to say, check out a book about urban gardening, even though you live in an apartment and have no idea why, that might be the breadcrumb.
The whisper of what if instead of the scream of what now? Got it.
And that's the moment, isn't it? The realization that maybe the universe didn't send the setback as a punishment. Maybe it was a redirection tool.
A cosmic course correction.
Yeah, the call to adventure is basically just acknowledging that the pain you're feeling, it's a signpost. It's saying the life you were living wasn't quite right anymore. It was maybe too small for the person you're becoming.
So accept the invitation. Step onto the path.
That's the essence of Chapter 1, waking up to the possibility within the void.
Which leads us perfectly into the next critical step, changing how we even relate to these challenges.
Absolutely. But first, like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
All right, Chapter 2, busting the victim trap, owning your power. This is where Reklau brings in what you called the tough love earlier.
Yeah, this one can be hard to swallow initially. It's about ditching that mindset of life happens to me. The idea that we're just passive recipients of circumstance.
He wants you to make blame, quote, a bonfire of self-accountability. That's a strong image.
It really is. It's about fundamentally shifting the power dynamic, taking radical responsibility.
And this feels especially relevant today, doesn't it? With so many people feeling kind of battered by these big macro forces, the economy, politics, huge corporate shifts.
Totally. It's easy to feel powerless. But Reklau's point is clear. Taking 100% responsibility isn't about punishment. It's not saying everything bad that happens is your fault.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction.
It's about freedom. He says it's the freedom to rewrite your story. Because think about it if you externalize the cause of your problems. Blaming the economy, blaming your boss, blaming the system.
Then you also externalize the solution. You're basically waiting for the world outside to change before things can get better for you.
Exactly. You're paralyzed. You've given away your power. Taking responsibility means focusing on what you can control, which is primarily your response.
I really appreciate that clarification. Because for our learner audience, this is fundamental, isn't it? You can't learn or grow if you believe everything is outside your control. If I blame the teacher for a bad grade, why study?
Precisely. If I blame the economy for my lack of savings, why learn about budgeting or investing? It shuts down the learning process.
What about people who genuinely have been dealt a rough hand? Someone laid off unfairly, someone facing systemic barriers. How do they take 100% responsibility without it feeling like victim blaming or just piling on more self-criticism? Does the book address that boundary?
It does, and it's critical. Reklau differentiates between what you control and what you merely influence, or what's completely outside your sphere. You are not responsible for the sudden layoff, the pandemic hitting, the systemic bias. Those are external realities. But you are 100% responsible for your response. Your attitude, your choices, your next actions from that point forward. That shift in focus from asking, why me, to asking, okay, what now? What's my next move? That's where the power lies. You own your narrative moving forward, even if you didn't write the first part of the chapter.
Got it. Own the response, not necessarily the initial event.
Exactly. And a huge part of owning that response is dealing with the emotional residue, specifically resentment.
Right. He uses that great analogy. Releasing old resentments is like dropping a backpack you've carried too long. Let's unpack that. What's the actual mental cost of carrying that weight?
Oh, it's enormous. Resentment is like running malware in the background of your brain. It consumes so much mental and emotional energy, constantly replaying old grievances against a former boss, maybe a family member, maybe even your past self or mistakes made.
It keeps you stuck in that story of injustice.
Completely. Yeah. And think about cognitive load. If you're using, say, 60% of your mental bandwidth, churning over how unfair something was 5 years ago, you only have 40% left for it. Learning that new skill, noticing a new opportunity, planning your next step.
So dropping that backpack isn't just feel-good advice. It's a strategic energy boost. You literally free up processing power.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the next logical step in this chapter, focusing your energy where it matters, focusing on your lane.
Especially hard in today's world, right? The constant barrage.
Think about it. Picture scrolling X, or whatever platform you use, global chaos, intense political polarization here in the US, outrage culture, just churning 24/7. It's designed to hook you, to make you react constantly.
And it's paralyzing and utterly draining.
So this chapter is like armor. It says, focus on your personal sphere of influence. We feel this immense pressure, don't we? To have an opinion on everything, to constantly engage in debates about national politics or global events.
Which, let's be honest, often achieves very little in terms of actual personal progress.
Right. It burns energy without moving your needle. Accountability, in Reklau's sense, means redirecting that precious, newly freed up energy from dropping the resentment backpack toward personal action.
Fixing things in your immediate world, improving your health, learning something new, launching that small project, tidying your workspace, things you can actually do today.
Instead of getting bogged down in the external noise you fundamentally cannot change in the next 24 hours, it's recognizing, okay, I can't control the stock market tomorrow or the outcome of the next election cycle.
But I can control whether I spend an hour learning that coding language tonight. I can control how clearly I define my goals for the week. I can control how I respond to the opportunities right in front of me.
That shift from passive commentary and reaction to active internal control. That's the power Reklau is talking about in Chapter 2. It's foundational.
Okay, foundational indeed. Ready to move on to how we start listening inward.
Let's do it! And for everyone listening, like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
So, Chapter 3. Tuning in, hearing your inner compass. We've dropped the blame, we're taking responsibility. Now, how do we actually hear what our own inner wisdom is trying to tell us?
This chapter tackles the biggest obstacle,
Oh.
noise, constant distraction. Reklau talks about turning up the volume on that quiet gut feeling, the one we've all learned to ignore during, endless Zoom calls and the constant pinging of notifications.
It feels like the default state now is distraction, isn't it?
It really is. The problem often isn't that we lack inner direction, it's that the signal is drowned out by an overwhelming amount of static. That quiet wisdom just can't compete with Slack alerts, news notifications, social media feeds, all literally engineered to hijack our attention.
We've almost normalized not being present with ourselves.
And you touched on this earlier often. This chronic distraction is a form of fear avoidance. How does Reklau suggest we see past that? How do we recognize fear as the thing muffling our inner compass?
Yeah, what's the mechanism there?
He suggests the turning point often comes through simple, intentional stillness. Which sounds easy, but it's incredibly hard for many of us.
Because stillness feels uncomfortable,
Right.
vulnerable.
Exactly. Vulnerable. Because when you stop the frantic doing, the constant consuming, uncomfortable truths might surface. You might have to face the fact that deep down you're really unhappy in your job, or that a key relationship isn't working, or that the path you're on feels empty, even if it looks successful.
So the distraction is a shield, a defense mechanism against the potential pain or disruption of facing reality.
A very sophisticated one. We're avoiding the inner signal because we subconsciously fear the action that might require us to take. We don't want to hear the message because we're scared of what we'd have to do.
Wow. Okay. So we mistake busyness for purpose, or at least for acceptable avoidance.
Perfectly put. And that leads to the key idea of this chapter. Purpose isn't a lightning bolt. It's breadcrumbs you've overlooked.
Back to the breadcrumbs. So forget waiting for the grand epiphany on a mountaintop.
Right. Instead, start looking back. What tiny clues, maybe non-urgent signals, have you been dismissing over the past few months or years? What does a breadcrumb actually look like in practice?
Good question. What are some examples?
Well, it could be a recurring theme that keeps popping up in articles you read or podcasts you listen to, even if it seems unrelated to your current life. It might be that online course you keep bookmarking but never start.
Or maybe that one specific task at work that you secretly love doing, even though it's not really part of your job description, the thing you volunteer for.
Exactly. Or the type of problem you find yourself naturally drawn to solving in your free time. These are the faint signals, the things that pique your genuine, quiet curiosity.
And this connects directly to our modern world, doesn't it? The explosion of mental health apps, meditation apps. People are clearly craving ways to quiet the noise.
Absolutely. It's a huge market responding to a real need. But Reklau's chapter, as the source material notes, is positioned more like the essential offline reset button. It's pushing for something deeper than just opening an app for 5 minutes.
It's the difference between, say, intellectually consuming content about inner peace versus actually doing the work of sitting with the discomfort of quiet.
Precisely. The book encourages practical, actionable steps for tuning in, creating intentional silence. Maybe it's just setting a timer for 10 or 15 minutes a day. Not necessarily to meditate in a formal sense, but just to sit. Maybe journal whatever comes up, no judgment, even the silly stuff.
Or, like you suggested, a simple ritual. 5 minutes before starting work, screens off, just looking out the window and asking, what am I genuinely curious about today?
Yes. It's about fiercely protecting small pockets of mental space, designing an environment, both physical and mental, where inspiration can actually land. You can't just hope it shouts louder than your email notifications.
You have to create the conditions for listening. Like tuning a radio to a faint station, you need to reduce the static first.
That's a great analogy. If you're constantly running from the silence, you're going to trample right over those breadcrumbs without even seeing them. You need to be still long enough to notice the trail.
Okay, so find the stillness. Notice the breadcrumbs. What comes next?
The fun part, chasing the sparks.
Ooh.
But before that, like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
All right, Chapter 4. Chasing the sparks. What lights you up? This feels like a real shift in energy after the deep internal work.
It absolutely is. We've cleared some space, quieted some noise. Now it's time to actively look for joy. Reklau talks about rediscovering play.
Play. That thing we forget how to do as adults. Those childhood hobbies that got buried under mortgages and responsibilities and the pressure for everything to be productive.
Exactly that. The chapter really encourages moving from just feeling nostalgic about things you used to love, like, oh, I remember when I used to love painting, or I miss playing guitar, to actual joyful experimentation now.
It's about creating moments where you just get lost in something, that feeling of flow.
Yes, that's the key. He says your bliss hides in what makes time vanish. Hunt it down. When time just disappears while you're doing something, that's a huge internal signal.
That's the sign you're operating in a flow state, right? Aligned with something intrinsically motivating, totally separate from whether it's useful or makes money.
Precisely. And Reklau positions this as the antidote to burnout. It's pure fuel for sustainable action because it comes from within, from genuine enjoyment.
That flow state, it feels like the secret ingredient we're all missing sometimes.
It really can be. And think about the context now. With the rise of the gig economy, the creator economy, this chapter feels incredibly relevant. It's the spark, the motivation for that side project idea that's been sitting in your notes app for months.
We see this happening all the time, especially here in the US, don't we? Passions that start out as pure play, just for fun, eventually turning into something valuable.
Definitely. Think about someone who loves, say, restoring old furniture just as a weekend hobby. They're not thinking business plan, they're just enjoying the process, getting lost in the sanding and staining.
Time vanishes.
Right. Then maybe they post a few pictures online. People start asking questions, maybe asking to buy pieces. The joy came first. The value followed. The book stresses that order.
How does Reklau suggest connecting that passion to a potential vocation, though, without sucking the joy out of it, without turning the fun thing into just another chore on the to-do list?
The key seems to be keeping the joy primary, prioritizing the enjoyment over the potential profit, at least initially. Let's take your example of the lawyer who loves baking complex historical recipes.
Right, she starts an Instagram just for fun. No pressure.
Exactly. It's her spark. She finds herself completely absorbed for hours. That's the signal. The joy validates the pursuit. Then maybe down the line, that niche interest attracts an audience for workshops or a cookbook deal or whatever. But the core driver must remain the intrinsic satisfaction. If it starts feeling like drudgery, the spark is gone.
Or think about platforms like Substack. Someone starts writing about a super niche interest, bird watching in urban environments, let's say.
Just because they love it. They're not chasing clicks initially. They're chasing the spark of sharing their passion.
And then maybe that unique knowledge, cultivated purely for fun, becomes a valuable resource people are willing to pay for. But the joy came first.
Reklau really emphasizes the practical hunt here. Active, low-stakes experimentation. Don't go out and spend thousands on equipment for a hobby you haven't touched in a decade.
Right. If you think you might like photography again, don't buy the pro camera rig first.
No. Use your phone. Download a free editing app. Spend 30 minutes just playing with composition in your backyard. The goal is just to taste the joy again, without the pressure of it having to be amazing or profitable immediately.
And if time disappears during those 30 minutes?
Bingo. You found a signal, a breadcrumb worth following further. If it feels like a chore after 10 minutes, okay, maybe that wasn't it. Move on, try something else. Low stakes.
Chase the spark, not the salary. At least not initially. But what happens when you find a spark, you start moving forward and then resistance hits.
Ah, yes. The dragons. That's next. But first, like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Okay, Chapter 5. Facing the Dragons. Beliefs that hold you back. This sounds like where the journey gets, well, challenging again.
Definitely. You've maybe found a spark, started experimenting, maybe even gained a little momentum,
Yeah.
and then bam, the internal resistance kicks in hard.
This is where Reklau says we have to confront those sneaky, deep-seated doubts, right? The ones that whisper horrible things in our ear.
Exactly. Things like, I'm not talented enough for this, or who am I to think I can do this, or the classic, it's too late for me, I'm too old to start something new.
Or I always mess things up eventually.
Yes, those are the dragons, as Reklau calls them.
Yeah.
The limiting beliefs that can completely sabotage the purpose you're trying to build. They have to be faced head on, otherwise they'll just burn down everything you started.
So how do you fight a dragon, especially one that lives inside your own head?
Well, Reklau suggests a technique that's not really about fighting in an aggressive way. He calls it slaying doubts with compassionate truth-telling.
Compassionate truth-telling. Okay, unpack that. It sounds gentle, but also firm.
It is. It's nuanced. It's not about yelling back at the doubt like, shut up, you idiot, I am good enough. Because that often just reinforces the internal conflict.
Right, it just creates more noise.
Instead, it's about first acknowledging the feeling the doubt brings up. That's the compassion part. And then gently but firmly dismantling the doubt with logic and facts. That's the truth-telling part. Kind of like dealing with a scared child acting out. Acknowledge the fear, then correct the behavior.
Okay, let's try a specific example. Say our listener, our learner, follows a spark, launches a little online course or a small Etsy shop, and earns crickets. It fails publicly. Low engagement, maybe 0 sales. The dragon immediately roars, "See, you're an imposter. You always fail at big ideas." How does compassionate truth-telling respond to that?
Okay, great scenario. First, compassion. Acknowledge the feeling. Okay, wow, this feels really disappointing. I see that this hurts, and it's frustrating that it didn't work out the way I hoped. You validate the emotion first.
So you don't just ignore the sting.
No, you acknowledge it kindly. Then comes the truth-telling, the logical dismantling. However, this specific outcome, this failure, is not a permanent statement about my identity or my worth. It's a data point.
A data point. I like that.
It's information about the execution. Maybe the marketing wasn't right. Maybe I didn't understand the audience needs fully. Maybe the timing was off. Okay, what did I learn?
You separate the event from your fundamental self.
And you reframe it as learning. All successful people use setbacks as data. My past attempts give me valuable information for the next try.
Exactly. You consciously swap that global, permanent, negative identity statement, "I always fail," for a specific, temporary behavioral observation. This attempt didn't work, and here's what I can learn for the next attempt.
That reframing feels crucial for actually being able to get back up and try again. Absolutely. Otherwise, the dragon wins and you retreat. And closely tied to this is another powerful tool Reklau emphasizes: forgiving your past self.
Ah, yes. Forgiving yourself for the mistakes, the perceived wasted time, the money spent on ideas that didn't pan out. Why is that so critical for moving forward?
Because if you haven't forgiven the you who made those past mistakes, you subconsciously carry the belief that that person is still in charge, that the person destined to mess things up is still driving the bus.
So you're constantly looking over your shoulder, expecting to fail again because that's what I do.
Precisely. Holding on to past failures or regrets anchors you firmly to that old, limiting story. If your present self is still mentally punishing your past self for a bad investment or a wrong turn, how can your present self possibly feel safe enough to take a new, necessary risk?
It creates this internal self-sabotage loop.
Totally. Forgiveness, in this context, isn't just some fluffy emotional release, though it can be that too. It's a strategic necessity. It unchains you from your own history and allows psychological forward motion. You give your current self permission to operate without the baggage of the past.
You know, we see so much content about this online now, self-forgiveness, limiting beliefs. The source material even mentions how this echoes today's therapy TikToks, but also says Reklau provides no fluff wisdom for real change. What's the difference? How does the book move beyond just consuming a 60-second clip about forgiving yourself?
It's the critical difference between intellectual understanding and deep emotional integration. You can watch 100 TikToks and know intellectually that you should forgive yourself or challenge your limiting beliefs.
Right, you get the concept.
But Reklau's approach, through the book's exercises and structure, guides you through the actual process. It gives you the metaphorical hammer and chisel. It prompts you to actually sit down, identify your specific limiting belief, write out your specific compassionate truth-telling response, consciously name the past mistake, and actively, intentionally release the associated negative narrative.
So it moves it from a passive idea you consumed online to an active, personal, emotional practice.
Exactly. It demands engagement. It's the work required for genuine change, not just temporary inspiration.
So the ultimate goal of facing these dragons is to consciously swap the limiting story like, I'm too disorganized to ever run my own thing, for an empowering one that's based on action.
Yes, an empowering narrative like, okay, I recognize that structure isn't my natural strength. That's useful data. So therefore, I will dedicate the first 30 minutes of each day to creating a clear, manageable plan. And maybe I'll actively look for tools or partners who excel in organization to complement my skills. See the shift. From a fixed identity flaw to a manageable challenge with actionable solutions.
That feels like unlocking a huge amount of energy and potential right there.
It really is. It clears the path for consistent action. Which brings us to habits.
Perfect transition. But first, like, subscribe, and share for more update and continue to next.
Okay, Chapter 6, Mapping the Quest. Habits for Lasting Clarity. We've done a lot of the deep internal excavation, faced some demons, found some sparks. Now Reklau shifts gears significantly, doesn't he?
Yeah, this feels much more external, more practical. He's basically saying, okay, you've had the insights, now here's the toolkit to make it stick. It's about daily rituals, routines, turning that abstract idea of purpose into something you actually do every day.
Exactly. This is the execution phase, moving decisively from the why we explored earlier to the practical how. And the core concept here is the power of consistency, the compound effect.
Right, that key idea. Small shifts compound into a life aligned with your why. We often think purpose requires some huge dramatic overhaul of our lives overnight.
We do. We wait for the perfect moment or the big break. But Reklau argues purpose is lived and built in the tiny, reliable choices you make every single day. That daily discipline, that structure, it's actually what supports the freedom of living purposefully.
That sounds almost paradoxical. Structure supports freedom.
Think about it this way. Without a reliable structure, those sparks we chased back in Chapter 4, they'll inevitably fizzle out when life gets busy or difficult. The daily habit is the container that protects the flame.
Okay, that makes sense. And Reklau suggests this process builds something crucial: confidence.
Yes. And not the fake it till you make it kind. He describes it as the steady build of confidence, like leveling up in a game you actually love.
I love that analogy. It implies confidence is earned, not just conjured up.
Precisely. It's earned through competence and consistency. Every single time you show up for that 5-minute meditation or that 15 minutes working on your passion project, even when you don't feel like it, you're depositing evidence in your own, I can do this bank.
You're proving to yourself through small actions that you're capable.
Exactly. It's confidence built on actual accomplishment, however small. And this need for reliable structure, for consistent habits, feels incredibly relevant for the way many of us work now in 2025.
You mean the remote work situation? The source material connects this chapter to that, right? Saying it's perfect for habit stackers using apps like Google Notebook LM to track progress amid remote work blur. Let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah, let's dig into that connection, especially for listeners maybe not using those kinds of tools yet.
Yeah.
Post-pandemic, for many in the U.S. especially, remote work became the norm. But the lack of external structure, no commute setting boundaries, no fixed office hours, often leads to this blur.
Where work life, home life, personal projects, it all just mushes together into one long, potentially unproductive day.
Exactly. And guess what's usually the first thing to get squeezed out in that blur?
The purpose-driven stuff. The passion project, the learning goal.
Right, because it often doesn't have an external deadline or a boss demanding it. So habit stacking becomes the antidote, intentionally linking new desired habits to existing routines.
And how does a tool like Google Notebook LM fit in? How does AI help with habit tracking here?
Well, for the learner-type listener who likes data and structure, these new AI tools can be powerful. Notebook LM, for example, lets you upload all sorts of documents, your daily journal entries about your habits, weekly progress logs, goal lists, maybe even transcripts of your own voice notes reflecting on your progress.
Okay.
Then the AI can synthesize all that information for you. It can pull out patterns. You consistently hit your writing goal on days you meditate first, flag inconsistencies, your energy levels seem lower on weeks you skip your morning walk, or even summarize key insights and aha moments from your own reflections that you might have missed.
Wow, so it turns tracking from just logging data into an active analysis partner. It helps you see the compound effect in action or inaction.
Precisely. It makes the review process more efficient and insightful, helping you stay on track without getting lost in pages of notes. It supports the structure.
So what kinds of specific, small, compoundable habits does Reklau suggest are particularly relevant for maintaining clarity and fighting that blur?
He emphasizes anchoring purpose into your existing schedule with small, non-negotiable rituals. For instance, habit stacking. You always make coffee in the morning, right? So stack a 5-minute tuning in exercise from Chapter 3 right before you take your first sip. Set your intention for the day.
Or maybe stack 15 minutes dedicated to your Spark hobby, Chapter 4, immediately after lunch, before diving back into work emails. Protect that joy space.
Exactly. Another big one for the remote work blur is implementing hard digital boundaries in the evening, like setting a specific time where work notifications on your phone are silenced. Non-negotiable. Protects your personal, reflective, or purpose-driven time.
So it's about creating these small pockets of deliberate action consistently. That's what builds the momentum and the confidence.
It's the consistency that transforms an abstract intention, I want to find my purpose, into a tangible identity. I am someone who actively works on my purpose every day. That's the power of Chapter 6.
Okay, building the habits. Where does this all lead?
To the grand reveal. But first, like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
All right, we've reached Chapter 7, the grand reveal. Living your ikigai. This sounds like the culmination, the integration point of everything we've discussed.
It really is the climax of the journey Reklau lays out. Ikigai, that Japanese concept, often translated as a reason for being, or what makes life worth living. This chapter is about how that sense of purpose, once cultivated, starts to weave itself into every aspect of your life.
So it's not just about finding the right job or finishing that one big project.
Not at all. It's broader and deeper than that. It's about the quality of presence, the intention, the alignment you bring to everything. Your work, yes, but also your relationships, your community involvement, even your leisure time. It infuses everything.
And what's the big payoff Reklau highlights here? What does living your ikigai feel like?
He talks about a profound sense of belonging, something that actively chases away isolation, which feels incredibly relevant in our often disconnected modern world, doesn't it?
Hugely relevant. So when you're living in alignment with your why, you feel connected.
Connected to something larger than just your own individual concerns. Maybe it's a sense of mission, or feeling part of community working towards a shared goal, or just being in flow with your own contribution to the world, however small. That connection, that sense of mattering in the larger scheme, is a powerful antidote to loneliness and existential angst.
That completely reframes the search for purpose.
Yeah.
Often we think of it as a purely selfish quest, right? Finding my passion, my fulfillment.
We do. But Reklau challenges that directly with a key idea in this chapter. Your why isn't selfish. It ripples out to inspire others.
Okay, the ripple effect. How does that actually work? How does me living my authentic life inspire someone else, especially if I'm not actively trying to teach or preach?
It works through a kind of infectious integrity, I think. When people around you, colleagues, friends, family, see you consistently making choices based on joy, meaning, and alignment, rather than just convenience, obligation, or what society expects, it gives them permission. Well, if they see you carving out time for that passion project, even when you're busy, if they see the genuine satisfaction it brings you, even if it's not making money yet, it plants a seed. They might start thinking, if they can make space for that, maybe I could finally dust off that old dream I had.
So your aligned action becomes a kind of visible permission slip for others to consider their own alignment.
Exactly. You don't have to say a word about it. Your lived example demonstrates the possibility, and that's incredibly inspiring. It makes abstract concepts like following your passion seem tangible and achievable.
And this ripple effect can even have broader implications, right? The source material connects living purposefully to trends like mindful minimalism thriving post-pandemic. What's the link there?
It's a natural consequence, really. When your internal life becomes richer, when your primary sources of satisfaction come from creation, contribution, learning, connection, Your reliance on external validation through consumption tends to decrease.
You need less stuff to feel fulfilled.
Precisely. You stop accumulating things primarily to signal status, or to distract yourself, or to fill an inner void. Instead, you become more mindful about what you do consume, focusing on things that genuinely support your purpose and well-being. Maybe that's books, experiences, tools for your craft, time spent in nature.
So it leads to a natural simplification. Less focus on fast fashion, endless gadget upgrades, more focus on quality over quantity.
Often, yes. And that quieter, less materialistic approach, demonstrated authentically, can subtly influence communities. It shows that a rich, meaningful life doesn't necessarily require frantic, endless accumulation. It models a different way of being.
So ultimately, Reklau is redefining success in this chapter, shifting it away from the purely external metrics we're usually taught to chase.
Completely. Success is no longer just about the salary number, the job title, the market share. It becomes primarily an internal metric.
Measured by joy, contribution, a sense of meaning, feeling like you're in alignment.
Exactly. Success becomes the feeling of being in flow, of knowing you're acting in accordance with your inner compass, of making your unique contribution. By this definition, you are successful the moment you choose that aligned action, regardless of the immediate external outcome. That's the real freedom.
That's a powerful place to arrive. But is it the end of the journey?
Not quite. There's one more crucial piece. But first, like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Okay, the final chapter, Chapter 8. The journey continues, sustaining the fire. This feels like an important dose of realism after the high of the grand reveal.
It absolutely is. It's the necessary grace note, as the outline called it. Reklau reminds us here that purpose isn't a static endpoint you reach and then you're done. He says it evolves like seasons.
That's such a relief to hear, isn't it? Especially for the learner type who might worry about picking the wrong purpose or getting locked into something forever.
Totally. It counters that pressure perfectly. Purpose isn't a destination carved in stone. It's an ongoing process. It grows, it shifts, it adapts as you grow and change, and as the world around you changes.
So the feeling isn't, okay, I found it, quest complete. It's more fluid.
Exactly. The final emotional beat Reklau aims for is described as a grateful exhale, ready for whatever's next. It's acceptance and openness. And the key idea is simple but profound. Stay curious. The path unfolds as you walk it.
You don't need the entire map laid out in advance.
No. You just need the willingness to keep walking, keep listening, keep adjusting based on what you learn. The why that resonates deeply with you at age 35 might feel too small or off-kilter by 45. And that's not failure, that's growth.
It means you've learned things, your values have maybe shifted, your circumstances are different.
Precisely. If your purpose hasn't evolved over a decade, Reklau might suggest you haven't been paying close enough attention to your own inner signals or the changing world.
And in the current climate, late 2025, with all the uncertainty, the AI disruption we talked about, economic shifts, this idea of an evolving purpose feels critical. The source material calls it the listener's anchor for ongoing growth.
Because if everything external feels shaky or unpredictable, your anchor can't be something rigid and fixed. It needs to be adaptable. Your internal connection to why you're doing what you're doing needs to be resilient, flexible.
More like an internal compass than a rigid pre-printed map.
That's the perfect analogy. It provides consistent direction even when the terrain changes unexpectedly. And the core practice for sustaining this, for keeping the fire burning, is essentially looping back through the previous chapters.
It's not a linear process then. You don't just do chapter 3 once and you're tuned in forever.
Definitely not. You don't just achieve purpose, you practice it. Daily, weekly. This means consciously revisiting the tools. Regularly retuning your inner compass, chapter 3. Checking back in on self-accountability when you notice yourself slipping into blame or victimhood, chapter 2. Actively rechasing those sparks whenever the initial joy starts to fade or feel routine, chapter 4. Facing new dragons as they inevitably arise, chapter 5. Reinforcing the habits, chapter 6.
So the journey requires ongoing maintenance, not just a one-time setup, like tending a garden, not building a statue.
Beautifully put. It's a commitment to cyclical growth. You commit to the practice of living purposefully every day, knowing that the practice itself, the ongoing engagement with these principles, is the point.
It's about staying awake, staying curious, staying engaged with your own life.
That's the essence of sustaining the fire.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next. #outro. Wow. What a journey through Marc Reklau's framework. It feels like we've really mapped it out step by step. For you, the listener, we hope it's clear how we moved from that initial painful why me feeling in chapter 1
That sense of confusion or drift.
through the essential work of taking responsibility, listening inward, facing down those limiting beliefs,
And then actively chasing joy, building supportive habits.
to arrive at the freedom of living your why now, understanding purpose not as a fixed point, but as an integrated, evolving practice, which we covered in chapters 7 and 8.
I think the central teaching we really pulled out today is that the power isn't out there somewhere, waiting for some grand cosmic sign or a lightning bolt moment.
No external permission needed.
Right. The power lies in taking that 100% responsibility for your internal narrative, for your responses, and then consistently implementing those small daily shifts, the habits that really do compound over time.
And reframing that initial feeling of being lost, that void from chapter 1, not as a sign that something's wrong with you.
But as an invitation, a powerful nudge from the universe maybe,
Yeah.
to start building a life that truly feels authentic and worth staying curious about.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we always like to leave you with one final thought, something to maybe mull over, reflect on, building on Reklau's idea that purpose evolves and needs that constant tending, that sustaining fire.
So here it is. If you were to define your purpose today, right now, simply as embodying the most useful, the most generous version of yourself in this current moment, what is the absolute smallest, most immediate action you could take, maybe even in the next hour, to serve that specific present moment purpose?
Knowing full well that in 6 months or maybe even next week, your understanding of that useful, generous version might shift entirely. What's the tiny, immediate step now?
Something to sit with.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Marc Reklau's Why Me, Why Here, Why Now, and the Journey to Clarity.
We genuinely hope these insights serve as a useful, maybe even actionable breadcrumb trail for your own path forward.
Until next time.